All people naturally have various emotions and desires, often having some urge to control things or people they like. But once this mindset exceeds a balanced state, we cannot foresee how events will then unfold. Will we stop in time or fall into an abyss? The reason I mention this is because in today's case, we will see a consequence of an intense desire for control. To understand better, please join me in today's case, and let us analyze the aspects I just mentioned. Hello, welcome to my channel. On the morning of February 16, 2016, in a residential area in Ningbo, Zhejiang, a sanitation worker was cleaning when she suddenly saw a strange object looking like a mannequin lying next to a large tree. Thinking a clothing store had discarded it, she approached to put it in the garbage truck, but was horrified to discover it was a body. More precisely, a blood-stained body. Without a second thought, the sanitation worker quickly took out her phone and called the police. After receiving the emergency call, local police arrived within just 10 minutes and secured the scene. The identity of the deceased was also quickly confirmed. Neighbors said the victim was Diana, 34 years old, who had recently moved to this residential area with her family not long ago. At the scene, the police found no clues near the area where the victim was discovered. However, from the body, the police noticed many suspicious points. The victim was wearing a nurse uniform from a local hospital, with a warm coat over it. The watch on her left wrist and her necklace were still intact. The victim's ring finger showed signs of wearing a ring. Perhaps she had removed it due to work, or maybe the culprit had stolen it. However, robbery seemed unlikely as her other jewelry was still present. Beside the body was a black leather handbag, about 30 by 35 centimeters. Inside the bag, police found personal items like a mobile phone, a notebook, a handkerchief, eye drops, lipstick, a wallet, and a phone charger. Thus, the culprit clearly did not target Diana's property, but attacked her for personal reasons. Diana's fatal wounds were to the abdominal aorta and inferior vena cava. Trace analysis indicated these wounds were caused by a sharp instrument, so Diana's case was clearly a premeditated murder. Notably, police observed a lot of blood on the victim's body, but not at the scene itself. This meant the discovery site was not the crime scene. During the autopsy, forensic doctors confirmed the victim had died recently. However, the cold February temperature had somewhat affected the body. Doctors concluded the time of death was likely between 6:30 and 7:30 this morning. Suspecting the crime scene was nearby, police split up to search again. Indeed, just about 3 meters away, police found a bloodstain that looked like it had been dragged and then wiped. Fallen leaves had also concealed this bloodstain, which was why police did not see it initially. Following the blood trail, police found another bloodstain at the top of the first-floor staircase in the residential complex. Thus, it was possible this was the primary crime scene. Police also reconstructed a hypothetical scenario. Around 6:30 to 7:30 a.m., the victim was preparing to leave home for the hospital where she worked. As she reached the first-floor staircase, she was ambushed by the waiting culprit. Caught off guard, the victim collapsed after the first round. However, seeing she was not yet dead, the attacker continued the assault, inflicting more injuries. When the victim showed no more signs of life, the culprit dragged her to the tree about 5 meters away, then returned to wipe away the remaining blood. This indicated the culprit was a resident of this complex. Police began questioning all surrounding residents and tried to contact the victim's family. When they went to the victim's apartment, police knocked repeatedly, but no one answered. Through neighbors, police obtained the phone number of Diana's husband, Ethan, and called him to return home. Soon after, Diana's mother-in-law, Laura, also returned from the market. Seeing a crowd gathered in front of her building, Laura approached to ask what was happening and was shocked to learn a murder had occurred at her home, and the victim was her daughter-in-law. With the victim's relative present, police began to question Laura. Laura, 59 years old, was Diana's mother-in-law. Laura stated that this morning, after preparing breakfast for her son and his wife, she had gone to the market early to buy food for lunch and dinner. Upon returning home, she saw police and neighbors gathered in front of her building. Police asked Laura about her relationship with her daughter-in-law and any recent strange occurrences in the family. Laura was silent for a moment, thinking, then recounted that recently her daughter-in-law often said she felt like she was being followed. Although she could not see or guess who it was, her sixth sense told her someone was stalking her. Recognizing this as a useful lead, police formed a small team to go to the hospital where Diana worked to gather information. At the hospital, Diana's colleagues were all shocked to hear she had been murdered. A nurse named Lily, who worked the same shift as the victim, said that when she arrived at work this morning, Diana was not there. Usually Diana was very punctual, always arriving on time. If anything happened, she would call to inform them beforehand. Thinking Diana had overslept or encountered something on the way, Lily called the victim multiple times, but there was no answer. The calls were made around 8:00 a.m. Afterwards, she also called the victim's husband, but he had already left for work and did not know if his wife had gone to work or not. When asked about the victim's relationships with those around her, from nurses and doctors to patients, everyone described her as gentle, kind, and someone who had never had conflicts with anyone. Here, police also asked Lily about Diana feeling like she was being watched, but Lily denied it. She said she had never heard Diana mention anything about it. The things they usually talked about outside of work were only family matters, or talk about her mother-in-law. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, a police officer asked, surprised. That is right. You did not know about this. Diana and her mother-in-law did not get along well, Lily replied. Lily told the police that Diana often complained that her mother-in-law was very displeased with her, frequently making things difficult for her, even from when she first married and had children. Until now, the two of them could not speak comfortably. The mother-in-law-daughter-in-law issue has always been a timeless story, so police did not pay much attention to this matter. Back at the residential complex, police were still busy taking statements and extracting footage from area cameras. At this time, a woman unexpectedly provided police with a new lead. Around 7:00 a.m., while she was preparing breakfast for her husband, she suddenly heard a loud scream. Because she was not sure if it was a scream from outside or from the television, she did not go out to check. If what this woman said was true, then the time Diana was murdered could be 7:00 a.m. But this residential area had quite stable security. If it was an outsider, how could they enter and leave so freely without being noticed? And if it was a resident, they should know that attacking at this time in the morning was not advisable. After the police call, Ethan, Diana's husband, rushed home. Hearing his wife had been murdered, he was stunned for a long time, before tearfully asking the police if they had made a mistake. After accompanying the police to the scene and identifying the body, Ethan broke down crying on the spot. The forensic doctors had finished examining the body, so they told Ethan he could take Diana home. Just then, Ethan's mother, Laura, stepped in and stopped her son right there. Laura believed that since Diana had been murdered, bringing her body into the house would be bad luck, so she absolutely forbade her son from taking his wife home. In the end, it was Diana's own parents who took their daughter's body home, although it was uncertain whether Laura was involved in the case. The relationship between the two women made the police very curious. In 2010, Ethan and Diana registered their marriage, despite Laura's objections. Knowing this, Laura was very angry. She was not happy about this marriage at all, because she was dissatisfied with her daughter-in-law. Whatever happened, she always wanted to cause trouble for Diana. Ethan also felt his mother had gone too far, clearly wanting to make things difficult for Diana, so he often sided with his wife. But what he did not know was that this behavior had made Laura completely furious. To her, her son was everything, because the family consisted only of mother and son. Before marrying, Ethan was an obedient son. However, later he argued with his mother because of his wife. Laura thought Diana must be the one instigating this. For this reason, Laura often cried afterwards because she could do nothing about her son and daughter-in-law at home. She went outside to cry to the neighbors, telling them how Diana had provoked them and how cruelly she had treated her. Naturally, all these words reached Diana's ears. The slander and shame from her mother-in-law made her feel very sad. As time went by, Diana could not bear it anymore and suggested moving out. In August 2015, the couple spent 400,000 yuan to buy a house in Jinsan New Village and decided to move out. This made Laura resent Diana even more. She threatened both of them that if they moved out, she would end her own life. However, the couple still moved out. After some time, Diana became pregnant. To take care of his wife, Ethan asked Laura to help look after her. Laura was overjoyed to finally live with her son and have a grandchild. It seemed this might improve the relationship between mother and son. However, Laura grew to hate Diana even more. Nevertheless, it all stopped at a discordant mother-in-law-daughter-in-law relationship without any major conflicts. After Diana's body was taken away, the police investigation began more thoroughly. Fortunately, the surveillance system in this area was relatively complete. Police quickly retrieved the surveillance video from the residential complex early that morning. However, the surveillance camera at the location where the body was found was obscured by tree foliage, so the culprit could not be seen. But there was something strange. Police discovered Laura also appeared on camera early in the morning. Not when she was going to the market, but when she was with an unfamiliar man. Considering Laura had blocked her son from bringing Diana's body into the house, plus her poor relationship with her dog, Thur-in-law police immediately listed Laura as a suspect. Afterwards, police once again went to gather information from neighbors near Laura's home and learned from them that the relationship between Diana and Laura was not good. They all said they had heard Laura complain about her daughter-in-law more than once. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law discord is very common, but Laura repeatedly badmouthed her daughter-in-law, making the neighbors also become dissatisfied on Diana's behalf. After sorting through clues and testimonies, police brought Laura back to the police station. When interrogated by police in the interrogation room, Laura insisted she was not the murderer. Hearing this, police presented the surveillance video and asked why she was out early on the morning of the incident and who the man beside her was. Laura suddenly panicked at this point. However, she still firmly insisted she did not attack her daughter-in-law. The man with her was an acquaintance. Because he wanted to buy a house in the area, he asked her to show him around. The apartments in this residential area were all similar, so she decided to show him her own apartment. Who would go house viewing at 6 or 7 in the morning, right folks? Is this not a bit too unreasonable? Especially since Laura was living with her son and grandchild. How could she bring an outsider home so early in the morning? The interrogator saw through Laura's attitude and told her the severity of the sentence if she voluntarily confessed. Hearing this, Laura's final line of defense was broken. She bowed her head and admitted she had murdered her daughter-in-law Diana. More precisely, she had paid someone else, and the person who had been following Diana was the murderer named Ken. Laura recounted that after living with her son's family for a while, her son had suggested she have her own room. The reason was that while caring for her grandchild there, she always found excuses to stay in her son and daughter-in-law's room, making Diana uncomfortable. After that, the whole family began to move to another place, which was the residential area where the murder occurred. Around the end of 2015, while Laura was chatting with some women in the residential area, she continued to say bad things about Diana as usual. The neighbors, hearing these malicious slanders, could not bear it, and one by one excused themselves and left. In the end, only Laura remained. Seeing that people there did not seem to pay much attention, Laura was sad and about to leave when a strange man approached her. "Hello, Auntie, my name is Ben. I just heard you talking about your daughter-in-law. I can find someone to help you vent your anger," the man said. Hearing this, Laura became interested and replied, "What do you mean?" Ben smiled slyly, lowered his voice, and continued, "You can beat your daughter-in-law to vent your anger or deal with her directly so she never appears again." When she heard the phrase "never appears again," Laura was a little startled. If Diana could disappear forever without her bewitching him, her son would surely return to how he was before. Just like that, Laura nodded and said, "I want her to disappear forever." In February 2016, Laura met Ken through Ben. The negotiated price between Laura and Ben was 150,000 yuan after the deed was done, with an advance payment of 50,000 yuan, and Laura needed to provide Ken with tools such as a car and gloves necessary for the crime. These things were nothing to Laura. She agreed immediately. After more than half a month of surveillance, Ken knew Diana's daily routine. On the early morning of February 16th, Diana was preparing to go to work. As she went downstairs, she saw her mother-in-law, Laura, calling her from the staircase. There was no one on the first floor. Recently, her mother-in-law had been causing less trouble for her, and her attitude had also improved. Diana did not think much and walked over without suspicion. Diana approached Laura and asked, "Mom, what is it?" However, before she could finish her sentence, Ken attacked her from behind with a knife. Attacked suddenly, Diana fell to the ground, clutching her wound as blood spurted out. Seeing this, Ken was a bit scared, hurriedly threw away the knife and fled. But Laura was still there, facing the suffering Diana before her eyes as red as blood. In a daze, Diana saw her mother-in-law pick up the knife from the ground and approach her. Then she attacked her daughter-in-law repeatedly until Diana showed no more signs of life. Only then did Laura stop. Laura dragged Diana down the stairs, took her body towards the nearby tree, then returned to wipe the blood off herself and the ground, then went home as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, the hospital did not receive Diana's leave request, nor did they see her come to work. Calls also went unanswered, so her colleagues contacted Ethan. The day after the incident, Laura was arrested and brought to justice. Ben and Ken, who were fleeing from Zhejiang to Hunan, were also arrested. At this point, the criminal suspects in this case had been completely brought to justice. Laura, the mastermind of this case, admitted her actions without defense or appeal. She calmly said, "If I did not act, Diana would completely take my son away from me. I could not bear that, and I wanted her to disappear." What was originally a harmonious and beautiful family was ultimately destroyed at the hands of the mother-in-law, Laura. In October 2016, the Ningbo Intermediate People's Court sentenced Laura to death for intentional homicide and deprived her of her political rights for life. Ken was sentenced to a suspended death sentence, and Ben was sentenced to 8 years in prison. As the victim's family, Ethan, along with his mother-in-law, filed a civil compensation claim against the defendant as plaintiffs. The total amount was 500,000 yuan, of which Laura was responsible for 300,000 yuan. Later, when she met her son again, Laura only saw hatred in his eyes. Laura was very good to Ethan, but because of her, Ethan lost the person he loved most in his life. Lost a mother he had always loved. At this moment, besides hatred, Ethan also felt endless sorrow. By now we know Laura's motive for the crime, right, everyone? However, her past is the beginning of these twisted CSE and possessive thoughts. Not only that, when learning about her past, I was also quite surprised to know that Diana was not the only victim who died at her hands. Let us continue with the police to investigate Laura's past right away. Laura was born in Ningbo, Zhejiang in 1957. Due to many siblings in the family and poor conditions, when Laura was very young, she was sold to another family. Her adoptive parents also loved this adopted daughter very much. Laura should have been satisfied and happy, but it seems when God gives you something good, He will surely take away another reward of yours. Everyone knew Laura was adopted and often teased her for not being acknowledged by her biological parents. When she was young, Laura was not sensitive and did not care about other people's opinions. However, as she grew up, the feeling of abandonment lingered in Laura's heart like a ghost, for a long time unable to dissipate. Laura's adoptive parents knew she was unhappy about this, so they treated her twice as well, spoiling her. As long as Laura wanted something, they would try to satisfy her. Such an indulgent environment formed Laura's contradictory personality. On the one hand, she was arrogant and stubborn, looked down upon by everyone. On the other hand, she had low self-esteem and was timid. If as an adult she could have met a tolerant and kind man, perhaps this contradictory personality could have been changed over time. But Laura happened to meet and marry Gary, a promiscuous and selfish man. Thanks to her adoptive parents' connections, Laura got a job in a supply and marketing cooperative. However, to take better care of her children and family, Laura decided to quit her job and become a full-time housewife. The early days of marriage were also sweet and happy. Gary was tall, handsome, and very gentle towards Laura, making her feel like she was immersed in a honey pot and the happiest woman in the world. But as time went by, Gary's true colors were revealed. By then, her son Ethan had been born. Gary had been promoted to factory director. Laura should have become the envy of everyone, but every time she went out, she felt everyone was looking at her with mocking, pitying, or even contemptuous eyes. This made her feel strange, wondering what was wrong, until one day her husband came home late, and she accidentally found a strand of curly female hair on his clothes. In an instant she knew her husband was having an affair. This realization made Laura feel extremely distressed. She had always longed for a home that was completely hers, but she never expected the result to be like this. The man who always said he loved her and wanted to treat her well for life was just a liar. After becoming rich and powerful, he immediately found another woman. So what was her purpose for existing anymore? At this moment she thought about ending her life. However, thinking of her son Ethan, she decided to choose to live like an invisible person. Since the marital relationship broke down, Laura put all her mind and hope into her son. At the same time, she had to make her son her ideal role model. At this time, her adoptive father had passed away due to old age. Because her adoptive mother had no other children besides Laura, she had no choice but to take care of her adoptive mother. When she fell ill, her husband Gary, who already had conflicts with Laura, became even more unhappy. Seeing his sick mother-in-law in bed, her clothes were dirty. Every day he cursed and complained to her. At that time, Laura felt her adoptive mother was a burden. A thought arose in her mind. Laura thought it would be better if her adoptive mother died rather than live. Like this, when giving her adoptive mother medicine, she added a large amount of sleeping pills, causing her adoptive mother to never open her eyes again. In the end, the woman who had single-handedly raised Laura was killed by her own adopted daughter's hand. This could be hidden from others, but not from Gary. Knowing his wife was so ruthless, his disgust for Laura deepened. When the two argued, Gary angrily shouted at Laura, "Laura, you killed your own adoptive mother. You are so cruel. You are a psychopath." Laura did not want her son Ethan passing by the room to hear this, so she remained silent, letting the matter pass. From then on, she also began to separate father and son to prevent Gary from raising his son. She despised Gary and forbade father and son contact, forbade them from playing together. She even did not allow her son to say a word to Gary. Many neighbors showed pity for Gary and thought Laura had gone too far. But Laura stubbornly went her own way, treating her son like a treasure, always afraid someone would take the opportunity to snatch him away. Faced with his mother's possessive love, the older Ethan grew the more frustrated and uncomfortable he felt. But thinking of the suffering his mother had endured and the sacrifices she had made for him, he still chose to endure in silence. However, what neither mother nor son expected was the appearance of Diana. After Ethan graduated from university and started working, Laura gave money to a matchmaker to find a wife worthy of her son. But Ethan fell in love with Diana, a nurse who was older, not very pretty in Laura's eyes. Sensing her boyfriend's mother disliked her, Diana intended to break up, but Ethan insisted on holding on. In the end, the two married in 2010. This angered Laura, who always found excuses to pick fights with her daughter-in-law. When Ethan spoke up for his wife, Laura would turn to reproach her son for forgetting his mother. After getting a wife, not only did she cry and complain at home, Laura also frequently badmouthed her daughter-in-law to the neighbors. One day, Diana came home from a night shift and was catching up on sleep when Laura rushed in, threw off the blanket, and criticized her for being a lazy daughter-in-law, still not up to cook breakfast when the sun was high. "Are you letting Ethan go to work hungry? Why are you so selfish?" Regardless of her son's explanations and advice, she continued to argue loudly, forcing her daughter-in-law to get up and cook before she would relent. Not wanting her husband to be caught in the middle, Diana proactively admitted fault and promised to come home earlier in the future, finish cooking, then go to bed. After enduring Laura's unreasonableness many times, Diana discussed with her husband about moving out. Later, the couple spent $400 to buy an old apartment, believing that the increasingly cold relationship between mother and son was all Diana's instigation. Laura's hatred for her daughter-in-law deepened. Not long after moving out, Diana became pregnant. When she was about to give birth, Ethan asked his mother to come help take care of the grandchild, but Laura demanded to sleep in her son and daughter-in-law's bed. When Diana returned to work, she could not stand it anymore. and suggested her mother-in-law sleep in the spare bedroom. Because of this, Laura went to the hospital, where Diana worked to find the head nurse and ask her to arrange more night shifts for her daughter-in-law. Diana angrily went home and had a big fight with her mother-in-law. Laura cried and said her daughter-in-law was bullying her. During that time, Diana was mentally distressed, not understanding why her mother-in-law treated her so. Ethan, seeing his wife's poor mood, took leave to take her to Nanjing for a few days. They asked Laura to help look after the child, which made her even angrier. Seeing intimate photos of her son with her daughter-in-law posted online, Laura became even more furious. Then in 2015, Laura met Ben. Everything that followed was as Laura had told the police. Because of her excessive motherly love, Laura embarked on a path of no return, turning love into a murderer and distorting herself. Your life may not be perfect, but you cannot hinder the lives of others. And do not forget that everything has its limits, especially love. Those chains in the name of love often cause great harm. After watching today's case, do you feel Laura's affection for her son was right or wrong? In your opinion, what constitutes true love? Please share your thoughts with us. Thank you for watching today's video. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel to receive notifications for future cases.